Hey, everybody, and welcome back to The Secret Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Diavella, and on today's episode, I'm answering as many of your questions as I can. It's going to be kind of like a rapid fire this time around. So normally where I maybe only get to about 10 questions, I'm hoping to double that, if not more. We'll see. That's the idea. It doesn't mean it's actually going to play out that way. I might get stuck on some questions and kind of dig in a little bit deeper, but that's the idea. Let's see if I can do that. I've got questions about my 30-day challenges. Is it okay to copy other creatives, morning routines, where I buy my clothes, and a whole lot more. I think this is going to be fun. A lot of questions that I haven't yet answered. Starting out right now with Tony Finbar Smith. He says, you said you were going to do a film on journaling. Actually, the reason I'm backing you on Patreon because I wanted to see it. When does it drop? That's a great question, and it's actually something I've been meaning to do. It's been on the to-do list, and I keep pushing it back and back just because of the other additional content I've been making for Patreon, from the extended interviews and everything, all the behind-the-scenes stuff that I've been doing. And I usually try to put out, lately the consistency has been around 3 to 4 pieces a month, including the AMAs and everything. So that's been one that I had promised you guys a while ago, and I just wanted to start this right up the front and let you guys know that that is coming, and I think it's going to be super helpful for people. I mean, it's going to be helpful for me myself because I have used journaling in the past, and this is really just a way to explore it a little bit more in different ways that you can journal for productivity. So you can expect that in the next 2 weeks. I've got a question here from Dave Kattengue. Would love to know how you script your videos. I've been wanting to start a few and wondering how list-wise, from a macro to micro scale, you plan and keep everything organized. So I have 2 different approaches for scripting and making videos. It really depends on the kind of content that I'm making. One, if I'm making a video where it's just me on the camera, talking to the camera, and maybe even it's basically I'm the only voice in the piece. So it may be a combination of voiceover, talking head, me vlogging around. With that, I usually start with a topic. I start with an idea and say journaling for productivity. Then I will write for 3 to 4 pages, a couple hours, just write as much as I possibly can. Things that I've experienced in the past. Maybe it's a personal story. Maybe it's just some valuable takeaways that I've learned over the years. And from there, I'll start to edit it down. I'll start to figure out the narrative. I'm always thinking visually. I'm always thinking, okay, how can I play with this idea visually, dealing with the constraints that I have, mostly filming from my apartment. Obviously, I'm based in Los Angeles. There are certain restrictions that are imposed on every video. So I'm always keeping that in mind while I'm creating this script. So I will write it all out. I'll do a little bit of research as well, and I'll start to try to find, so, for instance, when I did my waking up at 6 a.m. every day video, I drew from experience that I had waking up early, but then I also went out and did some research and tried to figure out, all right, what are some other ways that people have found has helped them wake up early? So I can kind of pull these together. The misconception I had in the beginning was that I had to have all the answers to everything. And I found out that I could actually go out and, like a documentarian, find the answers and find the things that would help me and potentially help you. So that's what I've started to, the approach I've taken with a lot of my videos. And it's actually taken a lot of pressure off me that I don't feel like I have to be the expert. I'm already screwing up on this whole rapid fire thing. But there was a second way in which I script my videos, and that's when I do interviews with people. So recently I just released a video with Greg McKeown, the full interview that you guys got here on Patreon. And the approach to that was, let me prepare for this interview. Let me figure out all the questions that I want to ask Greg, sit down, conduct the interview, and then I go through and edit the interview and I find what is the story, what is the most appealing and interesting aspect to this interview that I can then interweave a story with. And then from there, I'll start to break it up and start to edit it into a cohesive story. And then, hey, how does my voiceover, how does whether it's a talking head or whatnot, how does that fit into this story? How do I help to shape it with my own perspective and my own voice? And then that's when I start to kind of fill it in. With this one with Greg McKeown recently, if you haven't seen the video, it's called what is it called? I should know this. I literally just released it. It's The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. That's the subtitle of his book, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And I didn't have much speaking at all. It was mostly Greg. It was, maybe 60 seconds of my voiceover there. So I just kind of let him do his thing. He's so brilliant. And the story just worked out in that way that I let him do most of the talking in that film. So that's the basics of how I go about scripting my videos. Bailey White. Hey, Matt, do you feel like you're ever under pressure with your 30-day challenges as you have a large following watching you? Yes, but it's a good kind of pressure. And the kind of pressure it is accountability. So it makes me feel like I'm committed to this thing. And if I announce it to everybody on my newsletter, on social media, that, hey guys, next month I'm going to be meditating every day for 30 days, I'm really going to stick through with it. And it also means that, for instance, when I did the 5 a.m. challenge that I'm actually towards the end of right now, when I fail, it hurts. And I did fail twice during the 5 a.m. wake up challenge because I have a lot of excuses, but real life got in the way, and I traveled and there was daylight savings time, and it just wasn't worth it to sacrifice sleep and to only get 4 hours of sleep in a night. So there were 2 days where I ended up sleeping in, and the first one hurt a little bit just because I'm so dedicated to this and I want to be able to follow through with it, and I want to be able to show you that these things are possible. But I think the better lesson in here is that I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect, and mistakes will be made, and life will get in the way. So the question is, how do we get back into our habits? How do we then start to redevelop the habits that we had broken? So that's definitely something that I think about, but the accountability has been really powerful. And I'm trying to think about ways in which not everybody has an audience, not everybody's creating 30-day challenge videos. How can people create this kind of accountability in their own life with just friends, with family, with social media, and then have that actually make them want to stick through with it? So that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. Sean Edwards. For a beginning YouTuber, how big is the jump in quality when switching from a free video audio editing software to something like Final Cut Pro? My answer to that is that there is no jump in quality. The quality is what you put into it. So there are natural limitations to editing software. You may not be able to edit 4K files. You may not be able to edit really large files, but my guess is that you probably aren't working with those to begin with if you can edit in a free software. I started out with Windows Movie Maker in high school, and I had a PC. It was the only editing software that I had. I used Final Cut when I was at school. We had a very good television and editing classes in my school, and we had maybe 8 to 10 computers with Final Cut Pro, so that was hugely helpful to me to actually starting to get to work on these applications that are a bit more powerful. But at the end of the day, if you look at my edits, I rarely do things that are super complex or complicated. If anything, the color grade capability I imagine is much stronger, and I can do a lot more with it. But my edits are very basic. I'm not doing these crazy transitions or effects, overlays. For the most part, my edits are very simple, straight cuts, and that's it. And I think that that's almost a practice in minimalism and how little you can get by with. Can you edit an amazing YouTube video on Windows Movie Maker or iMovie? And the answer is yes, you can. And now there's free editing software for your iPad or your iPhone. And I have not and will not probably delve into that at all, but I have seen a lot of people do it and have amazing results. So don't let that be your limitation on whether you can do something or not. Once you start to make money from it, or if you save up a few $100, I think that's another maybe element of accountability where you spend the money on it and you feel like, oh, I want to make sure I get the value from it. So I would say it's always good to reinvest in yourself and your business. You just got to be thoughtful about where you place those things, and don't expect your quality to jump just because you're editing on Final Cut, because it won't. Nathan Lewis. Hi, Matt. Thank you for all your amazing content. You're welcome. This may have been something you answered, but could you share a little bit on how you store and organize your gear? I'm working toward a more minimalist lifestyle, slowly, but gear has always been tough for me to organize and let go of non-essentials because I always feel that while I never use everything I have, it's worth holding on to. So, for me, in terms of how I store all my gear, there is a video here on Patreon. I want to say it's my second vlog that I made here about behind the scenes of the Ground Up show, where I show inside. I actually also have a YouTube video out that's called Decluttering for Messy People, where I give you a little bit of a look inside my closet. And basically I have a gear closet, storage closet, essentially, it's built into our apartment here. A lot of apartments in California have these weird storage and shelving units that are actually built into the walls. So I have a drawer that's got my lighting gear in it and a couple Tupperware containers for like business documents. If you open up the main area, which you pull the doors open, and then you have these shelvings, and you'll see primarily that I have about 8 Tupperware containers where I have a lot of gear and cables. And within those Tupperware containers, I also have some sandwich bags that organize, Thunderbolt cables and USB cables and all the wires and stuff to keep it nice and tidy. And each one has its own purpose. There are a couple junk drawers within there, but I have my, one for my drone accessories, and I have one for monitors and batteries, and then I have one for my audio equipment. So I could label them, but for me, I know where everything is, and I'm the only one that needs to get to it. So I find that's the best way for me to just keep things nice and clean aesthetically. But I also keep my lenses outside on the shelf there. I keep my tripods on a shelf, and I keep my cameras usually fully equipped and ready to shoot with, and with a lens attached on the shelf as well. So the idea is that I can just pull it out real quick. I want to reduce as much friction as possible, even if it's 5 minutes of taking something out of a case and then setting everything up. That adds up, and that's a lot of friction, and I want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for me to get started. So, for instance, even shooting this thing, I already had everything set up. I just pop it out, pop it on a tripod, set it up by my desk, and then I'm ready to record. And that's the important thing for me. I want it to be tucked away, having that my business and my life are so intertwined and I work from home. I want to be able to have a clutter-free home, but also understand that there are different phases. And when I was younger and I was even making minimalism, when I started the film, I was living in Hoboken with a couple friends, and I had a bedroom, and tiny room, maybe half the size of my current bedroom. And it was just probably a single bed, maybe a full bed. I don't even know if it was a full. And right next to it was my desk with my monitor and my computer, and it was tight, but it worked. It's all I had, and I was completely happy and content with it. It was everything that I needed. I just had to be a little bit more thoughtful. There was just certain gear I actually couldn't buy, certain light kits that I wasn't able to, living within that tight space. So that's obviously, like I said, constraints. There are always these natural constraints on our lives, and you got to work with what you got. I have a question from Sifo. Hey, Matt, I'm inspired by a certain creator, and I would equally like to start my own YouTube channel that's centered around the same niche content. Because I like this creator's work so much, I'm drawn to sort of copy a few things here and there from their content. Do you think that's okay? This is an amazing question, and it's something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, having copied people in the past. But the thing is that it depends what you mean by copy. So if you mean copy their filmmaking style, I think that's a little bit more acceptable. And I think that's something that I did early on, where I would see my friends, not even big YouTube creators. I wasn't big into watching YouTube back in high school, but I would see friends and people that I knew maybe a year above me that were creating amazing films, and I was really inspired by them, and I kind of copied their style, their aesthetic, their color grade, and there were certain things that I really admired about their work that I wanted to bring into my own. So for me, that kind of copying is totally okay. But if you're copying somebody word for word, that's generally plagiarism. If you're saying the same exact things that they're saying, I would strongly recommend against doing that. You have to understand that you have your own unique perspective that you're bringing to any project. And if you're just starting out on YouTube, the best thing for you to do is not to fake it and pretend like, say that you're going to be the next Peter McKinnon. Don't pretend like you're him. Be you at your certain, the skill level you're at now. If you've been a filmmaker for 6 months, you can teach a lot to somebody who has 1 month of experience. So a lot of times we forget the skill and the knowledge that we have, and sometimes our lack of skill and knowledge is valuable. It's something that other people will find interesting, and it's something that people can relate to. And furthermore, you're actually going to be able to look back at this footage and not see somebody who was faking it in a year or 2 years. You're going to be able to look back and you're going to be able to have all this amazing documented footage of you just starting out, talking about your insecurities and the things that you're doing wrong and the things that you're trying to learn and where you want to be in 2 years. So I think that's much more valuable. And that's why it's important to be authentic. We have a lot of people that are fake authentic online. So it's difficult because then once you get success, how do you celebrate that? How do you actually enjoy it? How do you, oh my God, what an amazing opportunity. If you're being fake the whole time and pretending like you've already made it, then there's nothing to celebrate once you get there. And that's, I'm sure, a very weird feeling. So copy style to find your own. Don't copy word for word content. You can get inspired. Cite when you can, reference when you can, acknowledge people who inspire you when you can, and I think that's the best way to do it. Connor J. Wood. Did you ever have problems putting in work, hustling, when it was really needed? I'm at a point right now where I know I need to be putting in work, but I can't get off my butt to do it. Yeah, dude, all the time. I mean, this still happens to me to this day. Last week was a rough week for me. I didn't get a lot done. It was tough. And I felt really down on myself, and I felt guilty about the fact that I didn't do a lot of work. And especially with my 5 a.m. mornings, I'm still waking up at 5 a.m. and I'm not being productive and I'm not getting shit done. I just felt like, what am I doing? I'm wasting these days away. I could be so far ahead right now if I was putting in the work and doing a good 8 to 10 hours of productive work in the day, but I just wasn't. And I came to terms with it at the end of the week. And I had a little glass of whiskey towards the end of my day. And I said, listen, I didn't do a lot this week, but that's okay because we go into phases. Sometimes we are very productive and I have amazing weeks. Yesterday, for instance, I just got on it and I got a ton of stuff done. I finished editing a video. I scheduled all these social posts. I edited the full Greg McKeown interview that's currently compressing, and it's taken over 10 hours to do, and uploading to YouTube, which is going to take another couple hours. But I got so much done and it felt really good. And I just knew that last week was just a little bit of a phase. It was just a little bit of a slowdown. And we want to try to reduce those as much as we can, but knowing that we can't fully control everything. And sometimes we need to allow ourselves to take things slow, to not be as productive. We're not robots, we're human. And that's something you have to continue to remind yourself to make sure that you don't feel guilty. Now, I would say if you're having struggle getting to work or hustling and putting in the time, put together a plan the night before. So if you're going to be waking up in the morning and you don't have a plan for what you're going to do, it's very often easier to get swept up with social media, to let other people prioritize your life. So I found I used to actually do this on a piece of paper, and I used to write down like a to-do list or the things that I wanted to do. Sometimes I would even go through and I would journal out my exact day from time to time. And I wouldn't 7 a.m., wake up, 8 a.m., go to the gym, 9 a.m., check email for 30 minutes. And I would do this. You would never get it exactly onto a T because we're really bad at predicting how long things are going to take. But it was a motivator in a way for me to understand what I was going to do, even if I was a little ambitious about what I thought I could get done in a day. That was the main idea of just kind of getting it on paper and understanding what you need to do so you don't get distracted with the things that you don't need to get done. Experiment with the structures of your day. Maybe try waking up early, see if that's good for you. It doesn't work for everybody. So maybe, later in the day is when you find yourself to be most productive. Right now I'm experimenting with this myself, and it was hard with the 5 a.m. mornings for a while because I just didn't feel like working right away at 5:30. Normally I would wake up at 7 and within 30 minutes I could get to work. For the life of me, for 20 days, I'm like trying to struggle through working and I could not do it. So this week I've actually started to go to the gym right away. So I'll get about 30 minutes of, cleaning up and maybe checking email and doing a few things for the first 30 minutes of the day. But by 5:30, I'm out the door. I'm on my way to the gym. I get a good workout in. I come back, I shower. The sun's starting to come up. It's about 7 o'clock. I've already gotten a lot done for my own well-being and my personal life and my health and fitness. Now I feel energized from that workout and I'm ready to get to work, which it took me 20 days to figure it out, but I'm thankful that I got to that point because it's definitely helped me to be more productive during the day. So experiment around, try different things. That certainly has helped me. I'm doing really bad at this. We're about 20 minutes in and I've answered 2 questions. Ethan Painter, I have 2 questions. What is the first thing you think about every morning? Okay, so right when I wake up, I think, don't wake up, Natalie. Don't wake up, Natalie. Don't wake up, Natalie. I swear to God. I hear it come in, the ringtone or the alarm is quiet to start, but then within 3 seconds, it's full bore. So you hear it coming in, I'm like, oh shit, I got to get up. So I jump out of bed. Because Nat, she's a pretty light sleeper, and I have been waking her up a lot with these 5 a.m. mornings, and I just wake up earlier than her in general, and I feel very guilty about it. I feel bad that I wake her up. So I try to be as quiet as possible. I try to grab my phone, and it also prevents me from jumping back in bed. So I don't know if this is a teachable thing, but having a partner that you don't want to wake up is a great way to get out of bed, because I don't want to get back into bed and go on my phone because then I know it's going to wake her up. So I grab my phone, I grab my clothes, I'm out the door, and then that's the point of no return when you get out of the bedroom. So first thing I think of, don't wake up, Natalie, is you don't want to do that. You don't want to be on that side. His second question is, and do you do all of your video editing on your MacBook Pro tethered to a larger display, or is that a separate computer? So all my editing is done on this computer right here that you can't see. It's a Mac Pro, which is the trash can from Mac, and a Samsung 27-inch monitor. And I've had this set up for a couple years now, and it's worked really well. But my editing setups have changed a lot over the years. I did start out, like I said, with a PC. It was a Hewlett Packard computer, and I eventually got a MacBook Pro in college, and I did use the MacBook Pro with a monitor at one point. Eventually I did dual monitors. I had an iMac at one point, and we're talking over the span of about 10 years here. So there were a lot of computers. The Mac Pro is something I invested in a couple years ago when I got my Red camera, because I needed a really powerful computer to be able to edit those file sizes. That whole Red camera, if you're not familiar, Red camera is these really high-end professional cameras. They shoot most major films on, any film that's digital. I mean, there are other cameras, but for the most part, the Red is one of the most powerful cameras. I bought it. It was a lot of money, but it was hey, I'm investing in my freelance client work. And then I decided to give up the freelance work and just create original content. And then this Red became a burden. And then I had this, I invested a lot of money. I don't even want to talk about it because it's depressing. Depressing in a way. It was a mistake I wish I hadn't done, knowing where I am now. But, it's just a learning lesson for the future, because I invested a lot into the camera, all the accessories, my Mac Pro that it's more powerful than I would ever need, but it's also going to last me a while. So that's that. I am going to keep the Mac Pro for as long as it's legit and works well. Eventually in the future, I think I'll probably go to one of the iMac Pros. I like the idea of having everything clean and consolidated into one space versus having all these cables and wires dangling down at my feet. The desk that I have is, what the hell is it called? What is it called? Artifox. It's a desk by Artifox. It's got this awesome great grid in the back of it where I can store all my cables. I can have my surge protector literally mounted on it, and hard drives, whatever you need. So that's been a great way for me to organize that stuff. I definitely recommend it if you're looking to invest in a really high quality desk. Craig, hey Matt, I'm currently in the process of sorting out my morning and evening routines. Your video with your tips on waking up early has helped massively. I just wanted to know if you struggle with this in the winter months when it stays darker for longer. Do you ever struggle getting up in the darker months, and how did you combat this? So I'll just reiterate the point that I just made about the waking up early. It took a while for me to figure it out, but I did realize that it was hard for me not to wake up, but to be motivated to work, to actually sit down and do the work. And I just felt like it just wasn't 5:30. It's just too early for me to start working. So I found that exercising in the morning, getting my blood pumping and flowing, I think in part because your circadian rhythm really starts to click in when you see the sun, and that starts to wake you up. So without that, it was hard for me to really feel energized with my work. So that was my learning lesson for the 30 days. Brandon, you hear that? I don't know if you guys can hear that, but there's a really loud helicopter circling above. Living in West Hollywood and having the noise has been one of the toughest things. We've been talking about potentially moving into a 2-bedroom apartment outside of West Hollywood, but that would be nice just because it would give us a little office space, maybe even like set up a little studio for videos regularly. It's kind of tough to just, I don't know. I feel like I want a little bit more consistency to the look, and I want more control over how my videos look versus just shooting in the apartment. I mean, it looks good, but I think it could be better. And also just, I think I want a little bit more space and a little bit more separation. But West Hollywood might not be the place to live because it's so damn loud. Brandon Dubison, what clothing brands do you shop at for your minimal wardrobe? Right now, and I'm only saying this on Patreon, I've stopped sharing this publicly because I don't feel great about it, but I love the clothes. I get them from J. Crew. The reason I don't feel great about it is because they don't appear to be a very transparent company, and they don't share a whole lot of information about how ethical they are in terms of fast fashion and all that. They certainly seem to be in line with all of the fast fashion movement. So I don't really know how ethical they are. It's something that I would like to find more about. A project that I am working on is going to be to find a company, even to start just if it's my shirt, that is ethical. So as my shirts start to wear down and they're getting holes everywhere and stuff on a few of my shirts. So eventually I'm gonna once this stuff gets to the point where I'm ready to invest in new clothes, I'll try to find another brand. The tough thing about clothes is that if I find something that works, that fits, that's comfortable, done, check it off. I'm not dealing with this shit anymore. I'm not going around and trying to reinvent my style and my wardrobe all the time. So I usually, when I find a company that fits me well, I go with it. J. Crew might not work for you. It just depends on your body type. It depends on the kind of clothes that you want to wear. It certainly worked for me. And if you're looking for an easy option that has pretty high quality, it's hard for me not to recommend them because I use them. But if you're somebody who's like really into the environment and sustainability, Everlane might be a good choice. There's a bunch of other companies too. Just do your research and check it out if that's something that's more important to you than the comfort and all that stuff. Joseph Wood, not sure if you've answered this before, but what does your daily workout look like? How long do you work out each day? I'm trying to get started and have no idea where to begin. I need some of those minimalist biceps. All right. These days I go to the gym about 5 days a week. I've started to hike a little bit more, but that is not that much. Maybe once or twice a week. I'm trying to kick it up to about like 3 times a week, because my cardio is suffering greatly. But I go to the gym. I probably work out for about 45 minutes. Takes me about 20 minutes commute there back to get to the gym. So it's a solid hour of my day. And today as in these days, I work out 2 muscle groups in one day. I used to just do 1 muscle group a day, but I like to change up my workout every once in a while too. So this question, when you ask it to me, it really depends on what I'm doing at that particular time, because my workouts do evolve a bit. But I'll do biceps and back one day, then I'll do triceps and chest, then I'll do shoulders and lower back, and then I'll do legs. And those are all just different days. And the reason that you bundle those muscle groups together is because biceps and back are generally the same motion. So a pull up, when you're pulling yourself up, whenever you're pulling something towards you, that's going to be activating both your biceps and your upper back. And whenever you're pushing something away from you, like if you're doing a push-up or you're doing pec flies, you're pushing things away from you, that's going to be your triceps and your chest. And then shoulders are a little bit different. Obviously, it's very isolated. Sometimes people group their shoulders and their legs together as a separate day. But since I go to the gym 5 days a week, it's nice for me to even spread out these workouts a little bit more to give those specific muscles that I had worked out a little bit more of a break. So the workouts are different, and there's probably 200 different exercises and workouts that you could do to get in the kind of shape that I'm in. But I would say what is most important is to define what you really enjoy. Define your goals and define what you actually enjoy. What do you like to do? And if you really love swimming or hiking or jogging or lifting, focus on that first, because if you're just doing it for the results, if you're just doing it because hey, I'm going on this diet because it's going to make me look really good, and you don't actually like the food you're eating, you're probably going to fail. So within every path of fitness, within every path of healthy eating, there is a sweet spot, I think, that you can find where you both enjoy it, where it tastes good, or you really enjoy the process, and you're getting something out of it that's positive. So try to find that sweet spot. That's the best advice I can give you right now. And also just do a lot of research. Don't do too much that it's going to paralyze you into actually getting started, but research as much as you can and figure out the safe way to do it. Maybe get a personal trainer to help you out for a couple days, pay a little bit extra money up front, and then have them set up a workout for you that you can do on your own. I mean, that's, I think, the way to do it. Be safe. Consult a doctor if you need to, but a personal trainer will help you out just fine. Chris Huskin's got a question here. When putting together videos, I've seen on occasion you using little clips pulled from YouTube or films, etc. Not long clips, but just short little cuts added for fun or context. Do you have an opinion on copyright? Worry about using them? Get permission beforehand? I do not get permission beforehand. It's something I think about a little bit. I'm careful not to do it too much. Sometimes I'll add a little Seinfeld clip in there just because it's really funny. And I know that there's a chance that somebody's going to going to monetize it, and then they'll be taking money from the video, which I'm okay with. I don't advertise, so I don't have to worry about losing money through people taking it. So it's a trade-off. I'm usually safe about it. I usually try to just create 100% original content, but it's hard for me not to do a good joke or a good reference if I have it. And there is I think that we have a lot more flexibility than you think, but at the same time, it's I don't want to get sued. So I will not steal music, royalty-free clips, or anything like that. I'll only do it where I think it's appropriate. I do put a lot of thought into it, and I try to keep my content clean in terms of all original stuff as much as I possibly can. But you'll see it from time to time, and I don't think it's a terrible thing. Thomas Cornwallis has a question. Where would you and Natalie like to go on holiday next, and why? Scotland is a good place if you liked Iceland. Scotland sounds amazing. I definitely would love to go there. We might do Hawaii this year. We already have a trip planned to Spain for Natalie's friend's wedding, and then also to Italy, so then we can view our wedding venue and just kind of enjoy about a 2-week vacation there. So that's probably going to be the biggest vacation we do this year. And then in December, we're back in New Jersey to visit my family for the holidays. Like I said, maybe Hawaii to link up and meet up with Natalie's family this year. But, I try not to do too much travel. I do just enough, just as much that I enjoy it. And I'm not the kind of person that would be happy if I was traveling 365 days a year. Vanessa asks, how do you motivate yourself to do your 9-to-5 job and still be able to come home and do your hobby, dream, side hustle? I get home so tired I can't even do it. I have a video to finish and it's been that way for 1 month. How? This is a good question. It's personally not something I've had to deal with, and I was able to work around it by moving home to live with my parents. And I think that, in a way, is the first step. So you're stuck in this 9-to-5 job because you have bills, and most people have bills. One way to get rid of all your bills, or at least a majority of them, are to move home with your parents. It's not an option for everybody, but if it is an option for you, I think it's something worth considering. Other than that, I think you want to try to, you're probably going to have to work a little bit harder at this point. You're probably going to have to grind it out a little bit. If you want it enough, you're going to have to squeeze in as many extra hours as you can. I think the idea would be to first try to figure out a way to make money from it. So building an audience as a YouTuber might not be the best first step. So if you have a full-time 9-to-5 job and it's crushing you and you're spending a lot of time doing it, and you want to be a professional filmmaker or a YouTuber eventually, maybe start out as a freelancer, start to pick up freelance jobs, start to do weddings on the weekends. It's going to be a lot, but if you want to make that transition, you're going to have to sacrifice something. And part of that is going to be your time. It's going to be it's probably going to be some not relationships, but it's going to be maybe a little bit. I mean, there are going to be some sacrifices where if you're working Saturday and Sunday on weddings, you're probably not going to be able to hang out with your family and friends as much. I don't think you should entirely neglect your family and friends during this time, but just let them know, like, hey guys, like I'm really dedicated to making this happen. And then you got to network, you got to connect, you got to try to find as many gigs as you can, build up that freelance career enough, get your savings enough by reducing your expenses and saving up as much money as you can to get to the point where you can quit the job, or you can take a part-time job, or maybe they'll let you work from home a little bit. If you read Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Work Week, he provides a lot of practical advice on how to go about making that transition from 9-to-5 job to pursuing something you're passionate about, having more freedom and control over your schedule. It's worth it. The hard work is worth it. If you understand that, if you're clear on the why you're doing it, the fact that you'll have more time for your own life, that eventually at the end of this 1 to 2 year long process of leaving this job and pursuing something you're passionate about, you're actually going to end up having way more time for family and friends than you ever did before. So it's a short-term sacrifice for the potentially long-term, literally the rest of your life. So think about it that way, and it might help you to get motivated. Christian DaCosta, what have you found to be the best way to approach new clients to expand your portfolio? Is cold emailing still a thing, or should we focus on in-person interactions? So I think you got to do a bit of everything. I guess we're talking about here like freelance work at this point. And my friend Puno she did an amazing talk at Squarespace. I tweeted it out recently. I think if you Google Puno, Squarespace, freelancing, it should come up. But she did this amazing talk where she really documented and tracked how she was getting her work as a freelancer. So she left this agency life to become a freelancer, a Squarespace designer, and she built up most of her clients in the beginning through networking. It was like 100% through networking. And it was just finding as many people that she could meet in person, going to events, being relentless, meetup groups, whatever it is, different subreddits. You got to find your way to connect with people who would get value from your work, and do it as much as you can, because nobody knows who the hell you are. And the best way to do it is to meet people eventually in person or over a video chat, but nothing beats an in-person connection. So that's one. But then the second year that she was in it, it started to shift, and she started to get more work from referrals, more recurring clients, people who had hired her in the past. And it went from maybe 100% down to 70, down to 60 and 50%. And she had to do, she didn't have to do as much networking and in-person connecting with strangers. So that's the good news, is that it is, again, the short-term sacrifice of being uncomfortable and meeting new people. But eventually you don't have to do that forever. And that's how it played out for me. I got lucky early on by going to a couple networking events and getting some big clients that really ended up changing the trajectory of my business. But if I didn't get those, I would have had to do a lot more of it. And I would have had to kind of hit the ground and meet as many people as I could. But that's going to be the difference. And the thing is that most people aren't doing that. But if you want to be able to build this business, it's impossible not to. If you're very introverted, maybe try to find somebody to partner, to be a business partner in a way, whether you guys are creating a business together or you're helping refer business to each other. I think that's probably one of the biggest ways to fulfill that gap. But networking, everybody hates it, but it's something that you need to do. Nate asks, what's the best way to increase your energy? Pre-workout, nootropics, caffeine pills, showers, cold showers, etc. What are your thoughts? So the four things that I think, and I don't think it's anything that you mentioned in terms of increasing energy. Like when you're talking about cold showers or caffeine pills, yeah, it's just a hit of energy. Does it have an effect 2 hours later? Probably not. What you're trying to have is sustained energy throughout the day. You don't want to have all these big waves. And maybe even listen to my podcast interview on the Secret Podcast with Becca Shern, where she talks about sugar and how sugar is not a good thing if you have too much spikes, because you're going to be going on this roller coaster ride of energy. But the four things that I found have helped me the most. Number one is sleep. Get enough sleep. I need 8 hours of sleep. Less than 8 hours, I'm not feeling good. I'm getting tired throughout the day. That is huge. That affects my well-being, I've found, more than anything. Healthy eating, exercise, and sunlight. A lot of people forget sunlight, especially people working 9-to-5 jobs. Maybe the reason that you're so tired all the time is because you haven't seen the damn sun. You need to get that sun. You need to get that vitamin D. The balance of these four things has helped for me to maintain my energy throughout the day. But I also understand that I can't work for 14 or 15 hours straight and not collapse. So know when to call it quits. Know when to have that balance, to have that buffer time in between when you finish up with work and you're going to be spending quality time either by yourself or with the ones that you love, or just having downtime like playing video games. Just create some space where you just have nothing planned, nothing scheduled, and don't burn yourself out. How are we doing on time here? 45 minutes. These things are tough, man. When you just talk by yourself, it's a weird thing. It's a weird experience. Thiago Bruno, relative to the times of the day, night, dawn, morning, are you more productive in some? Do you think that willpower is limited? Yeah, willpower is limited. Willpower is definitely limited. I think it sounds good though. Willpower, it's motivational. It feels good. I think sometimes we talk about it like in an esoteric kind of way, where it's not like every day you feel willpower. Natalie sometimes says that I have a lot of willpower. It doesn't feel that way. It feels like I've just done simple things and I've pushed myself into uncomfortable situations enough that it's built upon itself, and I've gained more confidence the further that I've gone with this, that it kind of seems like willpower, and to other people it may look like willpower, but in the end of the day, it was just doing the small things. I would say I'm most productive. I used to be more productive at night. I used to be like a night owl, getting to bed at like 1 a.m., working at night, and I was able to shift to becoming a morning person. I don't know if the science backs that up, but that's something in my personal experience has worked. I did move from being a night person to a morning person. I know there are different kinds of people who are productive at different hours, but I found it's better for me to be on a similar schedule to those that I care about, the people that I have relationships with in my life, because if I was just working late at night, it would just sacrifice my relationships too much. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. Like, you can be productive whenever the hell you want, and it just takes setting up a system and being consistent with it. Javier de Pascual, how do you spend setting up how much time do you spend setting up a shot in average? I don't mean more elaborate ones like on the minimalism video you explained before, and I'm specifically interested on your talking head shots. Do you read from a script or improvise when talking directly to the camera? When you watch the video, the flow between the voiceover and talking headshots seems seamless. Do you record them differently? Normally, it's always a little bit different, but if it seems really seamless, it's usually because I've either thought it through ahead of time and like knew what I wanted to talk about and knew how I wanted this kind of to flow together, or I have most of the video edited and those talking head, me talking to the camera like this, they're filmed and inserted after I've got a majority of the video edited. So that's one way in which they can be crazy seamless. To really have a tight story like that and just going off the cuff and expecting the story to work out naturally is you're just asking for failure. So I think you do need to be thoughtful and script out to a certain degree if you want a really tight story. If you're just super interesting naturally and you don't need a tight story, then do whatever you want. But that's what's worked for me. It definitely works for me being not as eloquent or as I'm not always as clear with my thoughts as I want to be. If I put a video out there, I want to really mean what I say, and I want to be very clear about the message. And so that means that I have to script a lot of stuff. I think about the ideas that I'm talking about as much as I possibly can, and I make sure that I really have covered every aspect of it that I want to. And I get things wrong, and there are things that I would change looking back at it, but that's the approach that I take to it. If I just were to open the camera up, flip the thing around, and hit record and just start talking, I don't trust myself enough. I don't trust myself enough to get it right. So even with these AMAs, I usually this one is a little different because we try to do rapid fire, but for the first like 10 questions or so, I jotted little notes and I kind of thought about where I wanted to take each of these. But that's just me. That's my personal style. That's a way that I make sure that I get to the point and I provide as much value as I can. This shot, I didn't have a light. I'm actually just relying naturally on the windows here for the natural light. But a setup for a shot in the apartment, if I'm doing a talking head, like a talking head, for those that don't know, is just me talking directly to the camera. 30 minutes about, maybe a little bit long, maybe 45 minutes or so. I mean, you got to set up the camera, the light, the sound. You got to test everything. You got to make sure it looks good. You got to clean up the apartment if it's dirty. There's a lot of things you have to do to make sure that it looks and sounds good. And I don't read from a script, though they're often scripted. Unless you have a teleprompter, you can't really read from it. So I usually have my notes or the script below the camera, and then I'll kind of do a little bit of a back and forth, and I do improvise off the script and and kind of riff a little bit. That allows me to get some more natural, weird, or potentially funny moments that I couldn't get if it was purely scripted. So there's a little bit of a balance between the two. Jeff Walker, as a fellow Dave Ramsey follower, I'm curious if there are any part of his plan that you are deviating from. No specific numbers needed, but I'm curious of your thoughts on the baby steps, especially 4 and beyond, where you have the options where your extra savings and income after 15% are in retirement and paying aggressively on a mortgage. Basically, how much fun are you having? LOL. I know your wedding in Italy is probably the answer. Haha. Okay, I don't know if I read that right, but essentially it's like, so here's the thing. The truth is that, I mean, I'm not a strict follower of his plan and his recipe. I have up until this point. I probably invest more than 15% in my retirement. I don't have a mortgage right now, so I'm just like trying to invest as much as I can into my retirement account as early as possible to get the compound interest in the long run. So the idea is like, if I could just stack it heavy in the beginning and invest as much as I can right now, then if something happens and if money isn't really coming in the way that I would like it to, or if we have expenses, like we have kids and then we have to tighten up a little bit on our budget, then I've already got that money in there. It's already earning money on itself. And hopefully I can get to a point where I don't actually even need to contribute anything anymore, and I will still have enough in the retirement, enough to have a dignified retirement, as Dave Ramsey would say. So yeah, it's, I think the one thing that I actually don't take from Dave Ramsey too is he's, as far as I can remember, he is anti-credit card. And I use a credit card for everything, but I just automatically pay it off. And I found that works just fine. And I get a few points and I get some free flights every once in a while. If you don't trust yourself, if you know that you're always going to max out your credit card and you're not going to pay off everything at the end of the month, then don't get it. Never spend money that you don't have. Don't, you rely on a credit card for your essentials. You need to build up that security fund to make sure that you don't run into those kind of situations in the future. John Fisher. Let me see here, actually, how many. Okay, I think we'll actually be able to get through all these, and I think it'll probably come in a little over an hour. John Fisher. I find myself getting stuck. Like, I look at my stuff and say, I am going to sell it. I don't want it. Great. Then I stop and think about, where am I going to sell it? Would anyone even want to buy it? Do I do Amazon, a yard sale, pawn shop? Then I get overwhelmed. How do you get unstuck? That's a great question, because I'm going through this myself. I have a couple cameras and a lens and headphones that I'm looking to sell. And I had taken the photos of it. I started to do all the work, and then I just stopped because we traveled, and then I never got around to selling it. You're probably gonna have to sell it for less than you think you're gonna get for it. Whenever I'm posting and selling camera gear, I usually put it about half off. I could probably get more from it. But by the way, my Red camera, it was probably close to half, maybe a little bit more than half I got back, maybe like 60% of what the original cost was. But you're not going to get the full amount, or, maybe if you try to sell it around for months and months, you can get 75% of what you purchased it for. That's not that interesting to me. I'd rather spend my time on my business and figuring out other ways to add value to people than thinking about how am I going to get the most money for selling this, $100 pair of headphones. So depending on what your financial situation is, you may want to try to maximize that. But for me, it's like you're giving up time by just being picky about how much you want to get for it. So yeah, take some photos, as nice photos as you can, post it online, try to sell it. If you've got a ton of shit, yeah, do a yard sale. A lot of ways to go about doing it. Give it away. Give some stuff away. Fuck it. If you're doing okay and you think you're financially in a pretty good position and you don't need a couple $100, then by all means give it away. That's something I did. I gave away an electric guitar and a few other things when I was living at home with my parents, because I knew my friends would get value out of them and they would enjoy having them. And I didn't need them anymore. So $100, $200, I would actually rather make their day than get a couple extra bucks in my bank account. That was a full-on stutter. Holly, how did you come up with the name The Ground Up Show? It's a great name for the podcast, and I'd love to hear the story behind it. Coming up with names is really tough, and I've never been very good at it. My first production company was Black Box Films, Black Box Productions. I did White Box Films, which was the wedding arm of the company. Catalyst Films is my current production company name. I journal. I will write down every possible name I could think of, and I usually end up coming up with a bad name, and I usually end up regretting it and wanting to change it. But I do like the Ground Up Show. It is, I think, a pretty solid name. It's a fun name. It's pretty generic in a way. That was one thing that was bad about it, I thought, because it wasn't specific. But I thought the generic approach to it also allowed me to open it up to do more things. So it was really like this idea of building something from the ground up, the Ground Up Show. But it could also be ground up. It's different ideas. It's different people coming together, talking about ideas. So it doesn't always have to be about building something from the ground up. Also, Ground Up Coffee. It's caffeinated conversations. So there were a couple of different meanings to the name, which made me like it. It's a name that my friend and I, Nate, came up with for a show that we were trying to create a pilot for in college to maybe sell to Comedy Central or whatever. And it was about an ad agency starting from the ground up and trying to build a business. So that's where the name originally stems from. I had totally forgot about it. And then I had Nate on the podcast and he reminded me. So that was funny. Because it was one of those things where when people steal jokes sometimes, sometimes they do it accidentally. They're like, oh, that premise was done before, but I just totally forgot about it. And then I thought I came up with it from myself. So I stole that from a previous version of myself. Christopher Thurber, how do you push yourself the last 20% to finish a project when you've lost all motivation to work on it? I know for me, at least, the first 80% of a project is the most fun, and I have the hard time finishing the last part so I can ship it. Maybe you're done. They say the 80-20 rule, just get 80% of the way and then ship it. Maybe you're spending too much time focusing on the final 20%. So that's one thing I would say. Set a deadline. Deadlines are a great way to get you off your ass and make sure you finish the project. Maybe once you get 80%. Also, 100% is the worst thing you could possibly do. Say 90 to 95%. Pick a number and say, okay, that's going to be my finish point, because you're never going to get to 100%. Mohammed Asawi. This is a really long question, so I've got a little bit of a break in here to answer some, and then we'll keep going. But this is a long one. Matt, I have a huge question that my life depends on it and will activate all of my dreams. And you are super inspirational and have mentioned it before, but not in detail. And it would mean the world to me if you can really go deep on this. So the first part that, right now, I'm going to stop and say, if you're relying on an answer from someone to make things happen, that you're probably not in a good place and you're probably not going to make things happen. You need to be the kind of person that can go out and find the answers for yourself. You can't rely on people to give you all of the answers. You need to go out, trial and error, put your stuff into the market, try to freelance, do everything you possibly can to make things work, and your intuition will grow and you'll get better at understanding how to be a business person, how to get new business, how to make it as a motion graphic designer, which is what he is. I already read ahead, but that's the whole idea. So just this is not going to change your life. This answer from me will not change your life. None of these answers will likely change your life. They might help you. They may guide you in the right direction, but you have to be the kind of person that's going to go out and get it for yourself. I'm going to continue the question now. What is the most effective practical way to start freelancing online as a motion graphic designer or editor? What is most effective being a freelancer on Upwork, taking on a project or going into stock photography, footage, templates, selling like VideoHive or VideoBlock type websites where you can make a template design and people download them. I'm very advanced motion graphic designer, editor, and specialize in 2D animation, video explainers, and it started on Upwork and realized the competition is crazy. You're competing with people who are willing to work for a fraction of the price because they live in countries that are much, much cheaper than the US. Also, you have to literally send like 60 proposals throughout the week to get one response. Wouldn't just creating an intro template once and putting it on VideoHive be more effective as you do the work once and it potentially can be downloaded infinitely? So, or is taking on freelance work like Upwork a better start? I am so confused, but I have so much energy and willing to do the work. I just want to be guided on the right path. This would mean the world to me. Thank you. Okay. So maybe I talked too soon, but like, you get it. He gets it. You got to put in the work. But did I say his name? Mohammed Asawi. I did. So Mohammed, I think the one thing I will say is that if you're trying to make a living off of selling templates full time, there's a lot of competition to that as well. So you have to have an audience. I think that if you want to be a top contributor on VideoHive, it's likely going to come from you sending people there. So maybe what you can do is step one, start to try to build an audience, create tutorials, give away free templates, create a reason that people would want to follow you. How can you add value to a lot of people? That's, I think, one way for you to be, to spend at least a percentage of your time. And you're really just building up a personal brand. You might want to read Gary Vaynerchuk's Crush It or his recent 10-year anniversary book, Crushing It, which is kind of all about creating your own personal brand and your identity online. It's something that's important even if you have 5 or 10 clients, because they're going to be able to see you, the work you do. They're going to, it's going to help them to give over more money to you because they can see that you are an expert thought leader in this field of design, or graphic design, motion design, and editing. The next thing, again, I will say that you need to network and build up these connections. I did do Craigslist early on, and I didn't find a lot of amazing relationships and client relationships that stuck through for years and years. There were oftentimes a couple $100 here and there. It was great experience. I learned a lot. I learned how to work and negotiate with clients and how to, put out amazing work and get better as a filmmaker. But at the same time, it was a lot of work for a little bit of money. So when I was able to start charging, the most I was able to start charging is when I'm networking, I'm meeting new people, I'm delivering for clients, high-end clients that are paying thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars for projects. And then they're able to intro me to other people. Ramit Sethi has great advice where he says, I think he kind of builds it into contracts, or he at least makes it be known that requests getting to referrals by, if, we do this work and you're really happy with it, if you could give me 2 referrals and have that be like explicit in the contract, that will help drive more business. Ramit Sethi has a bunch of amazing courses. I would definitely make sure you check out his work because he is really good at helping to figure out how to gain new business. The one, I think it was from him, he said, the best way to get new business is from previous clients, not from new clients. Most people have this expectation that they have to continually get new and new clients, but sometimes it's just about packaging and delivering the right services to clients that you already have, maybe pitching a retainer with them. You got to go out, build up the network, meet with people in person. What you can provide that people can't provide on these sites that, there are hundreds of designers and motion graphics artists that are competing for really tiny breadcrumbs. You can offer maybe a higher level of quality. You can offer personalization. You can offer communication. You can be very quick and responsive. You can be great to work with. You can be trustworthy. You can be private. There are a lot of things that you can provide when you build a brand around yourself and the company that you've created that people on these other companies can't. Like, I would much rather pay good money for an amazing motion graphic artist who has an awesome portfolio online, who's a thought leader on the subject, than just going onto one of these sites and finding somebody to get the job done. So that's what I would say. Like, look to build authentic, quality relationships with people, and then try to develop those relationships in a way that you could potentially work with them for years and years. Don't be pushy. Don't be aggressive. Don't demand that they, buy more stuff from you, but just be thoughtful. Try to add value. Try to think about, what can I do for them? How can I add value to these clients in a further way? And be okay if they say no. No means no. Leon Schmidt And then I got 2 more questions after this one. I plan on paring down over the next couple of weeks, and the first task is comics. If I sell all the comics I don't care about and use some of the money for new comics that I do like, do you think it's defeating the purpose of minimizing? My dream job is to be a comic book artist. Don't know if that matters. Every comic I want to read but don't want to collect will now be digital. But I don't want to go all the way since I really love physical comics. Leon, if you love the comics, keep the comics. This is something that Ryan Nicodemus said in Minimalism. He said, people come up to him all the time and they say, I can't be a minimalist like you because I've got all these books and I love the way they feel. I love the way they smell. I love looking at the collection. I love lending them out to my friends. It gives me a lot of value having these books. And then Ryan said, keep the books. Don't get rid of the books. And, I can't speak for you. Maybe you're at a place where you feel like you have too many comics. Maybe it's just overflowing in your apartment or your home and you decide that you want to pare down on them. Then that's okay. I think that sounds like a reasonable, smart decision to be thoughtful about which comics you own, which you own digitally, and the ones that you really want to hold on to. If there are ones that you never look at and you don't really care about and aren't that interesting, then maybe sell them and get rid of them. But I think if you had a full bookshelf filled with comic books that you really love and it's something that you like to share and show to people, then especially if it's something that's part of your career and what you do, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. So if you love comics, keep your comics. Matt Barnfield. Hi, Matt. I made a short doc-style video within the UK healthcare sector, mainly telling patient stories and sometimes helping people to understand different treatment options. Often I have to film interviews in cramped, bland offices and other unattractive environments. I wondered if you could share some of your experience of working in similar environments and how you go about trying to get the best out of a location. Okay. I think I talked about this on episode 5 or 6 of the Ground Up Show with my friend Chris Newhard, who he has been a collaborator and a co-filmmaker on many of the projects I've done in the past, oftentimes in cramped, tiny offices in terrible little holes in the wall. I think even if you look at the Gary Vee interview I just did, that was another example of, hey, tight space, not a lot of great options for filming. What's the best that we can do with this location? And that's something that you're always confronted with, these kind of constraints, and you always need to say, hey, what's the best I can do with the information, with the content, with the location that we currently have. So I like to use a 50 millimeter lens because it often gives me a great depth of field. So then even if it is a shitty backdrop, I can just blur it the hell out and nobody, you know what I mean? I'd rather have a blurred out background than a shitty background. So if you have a 50 millimeter and it's kind of framing from maybe the top of my head to just above my chest, it's at 1.2 to 1.8 f-stop, you're gonna be able to blur out most of the background. Try, obviously if you're doing 2 cameras, it's different, but obviously the main person that you're interviewing should be the focal point. They should have the best backdrop. I try to shoot into corners a little bit. We will pull in lamps from around the office. We'll find plants from around the office and we'll set dress and create this ourselves. This is on very small crews with like 2 to sometimes maybe 5 people, but nobody dedicated to set design or anything like that. That's just us saying, this needs a little bit more. This isn't very good. You try things out, you audition them. So, hey, I'll be behind the camera and then I'll have Chris kind of inch in the plant and be like, okay, that looks good. Now pull the plant out. Okay, actually, no, bring it to the other side. That looks good. Let's go with that. And then the idea is that you want it to look interesting, fit the theme of it. If it's medical driven, then, you want a certain look. If it's creative, startup driven, you want a bike rack behind you. You want to figure out the different approach for the interview. You can do it in the lobby or the office somewhere in the office, but you're going to deal with a lot of noise. We filmed Mike Davidson from Twitter for a documentary called Design Disruptors. in one, like a main open area, because it was just a really cool, beautiful backdrop. But there was a door that was kept slamming and slamming and slamming. So we had an assistant just there holding the door for people and making sure that nobody slammed it. And then also putting signs around, asking people to be quiet. You will sometimes have that trade-off. Do I want really crisp audio, or do I want to have a really beautiful location? And that's up to you to decide which one you want. More often than not, I go with the better audio, more intimate, like better interview, better content, more comfortable interviewee than a really beautiful location in a big open space where a bunch of people might be watching us. So that's a trade-off you're always going to have to make, and you just got to do your best with what you've got. Last question here from Nathan Woodfield. How was your transition from filming others to filming yourself? Were there some obstacles you had to overcome? What were they, and how did you overcome them? Filming other people is so easy. Oh, it's great. I love it. It's so easy for me. I really enjoyed filming other people, and filming myself was a challenge. Especially if you look at the early videos that I made, I was always uncomfortable. I've gotten much more comfortable, but I oftentimes continue to overthink things in a way that I wouldn't. You can let your guard down in a way when you're not filming, when you're filming somebody else and you're just trying to focus on the story, and you can kind of just be behind this camera. It's almost like this little safe space for you to be in. But and a creative space to view the world from. But when you're in front of the camera, it's a little bit harder to think big picture when you're trying to figure out, all right, how do I want to get this message across? Oh God, I keep screwing up these lines. I keep, forgetting what I'm trying to say. I keep losing my train of thought. You get frustrated. It's much easier for me to get frustrated when I'm in front of the camera than when I'm behind it, although that obviously does happen. So right now, I am actually trying to incorporate a little bit of both. I'm trying to incorporate the interviews with people, with stuff that I'm doing with me in front of the camera, and trying to find a style that I'm really happy with. I just want to be happy with the stuff that I'm making. I want to be excited about what I'm doing, and I don't want anything to ever feel like a grind. And sometimes that happens. There's sometimes videos that I'm shooting and I'm like, I just want to be done with this shit. Like, this is the least enjoyable thing ever. I just got to push through it. That's going to happen. But you're trying to minimize that and increase and figure out a way to actually enjoy everything. So if that means maybe me doing more voiceovers, or maybe me interviewing more people and doing more documentary style versus me on camera talking, so be it. But that's just the continued exploration of being a creative and trying to find happiness as a creative. That is it for this week's episode / this month's episode of The Secret AMA. Sorry, it's The Secret Podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching and for listening. And I will follow up next month to get questions for you guys for another Secret Podcast. Maybe I'll do a little bit better at being rapid fire, but I didn't do a good job at rapid fire this time. But I hope these questions helped you guys out. As always, if you want to start the conversation in the comments below, I would love to see you down there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you next time.